All right, everybody. Good morning. We're here at another show today. We have Ashley Christenson in the house with Golden Bee Billing. Welcome, Ashley. How are you?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you support therapists.
So first off, I am a professional medical biller. That's what I do. I've been doing it for 20 years, and I run everything business billing that has to do with private practice for mental health.
Nice. So, how long have you been in the billing world?
I have been doing this for 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang. So, how did you get started in billing?
So it's kind of a complicated scenario. In my early days, before I was actually a biller, I was a little front office girl, right? Answering phones, scheduling appointments, all that kind of fun stuff. But what really happened is in my late teens, 19, 20-ish, I was having some medical issues, and I actually was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And during that time, there's so many doctor's appointments and things that happened. There was a big mix-up with $100,000 bill that went to collections is basically where the whole thing started. So the hospital couldn't tell me what happened, except for my insurance wasn't going to pay for it, but my insurance was saying they could pay for it, but there was something that was wrong. I was kind of getting the runaround. It ended up going to collections. At 19 years old, I definitely could not afford to pay $100,000. And so I just let it go to collections. And because I couldn't figure out how to fix it, and no one could seem to help me figure out how to fix it, I opted to go to school. I went to school. I got my associate's degree. I got all my initial certifications. And the first job after school was actually at the hospital that sent my bill to collections. The only reason that I ended up getting that job is literally because I walked in there and they said, "Oh, we might not be able to hire you because of this bill that's in collections." And I said, "Actually, that's why I'm here. Let me show you how you could have fixed that." And I walked her through. It took me 45 minutes to walk her through the whole process. And her eyes were as big as deer in headlights. And she literally just went in there and wiped the whole thing. And I left that interview with a job. So that is how my official billing career started.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you started billing literally with firsthand experience with your own medical stuff that was going on.
Yep.
That is wild. Yeah. And so then so you got that job and the rest is history.
The rest is pretty much history. I mean, I'm the kind of person that once I find something I'm interested in, I focus on it. And there's a lot to know and a lot to do. And I'm kind of one of those fixer type of people, and there's nothing better to fix than billing. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Ashley, it's interesting that you say that, because when I think of the world of billing, I'm like, oh, like it's billing. Like you just process you know what I mean? Like you send your bill to the insurance company and send it back. I don't think a lot of clinicians may really understand like how deep the world of billing goes.
It's pretty deep.
Yeah. And I'm for somebody who's never really thought about billing services and what they actually do behind the scenes, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So really, a billing service is more than just submitting claims for you. Like we really help take care of the whole business side of your practice. So why did you start your practice? To see the people, but in order for the practice to run, it still takes money and it still takes things to do that. And it still takes compliance and all of the business part of everything. So our job is to make sure that you get paid, yes, but it's also to make sure that the clients or the patients are getting the best care possible, which includes being able to use their insurance benefits. It all kind of ties in together. So our job is literally to make sure that the business can continue to run and to make sure that we're doing our best on the financial side to make sure that the patient gets the care that they came there to receive.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I wonder when and how does billing become an issue in the first place?
So it really becomes an issue when people think they understand and they totally don't understand. And it's, you might have certain basics or certain information, but all the steps are not there to be completed. And it's not just about sending claims. It's literally everything. It's from all your intake paperwork and everything. If you're missing one piece or part, it causes issues somewhere else.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I think of billing, I'm like, well, we submitted it. Like, there's no issues. Like, we got paid. What's kind of can you give us some examples of what happens behind the scenes that a billing company does for the clinician and the practice?
So there's kind of a few different things. As far as myself goes and my team of people, we're verifying on a regular basis what we're actually billing out. The information that goes directly on the claim is information that comes directly from your notes for that appointment. It starts literally from the minute that client calls to set up an appointment, all the way through sending the claims, getting paid by insurance, and then coming back and if they have any responsibility that they have to pay for, it comes to all of that. But we literally have to verify even just that 1 hour session code. We have to verify from your notes that it was actually an hour, because 1 minute makes a difference between, is it a 45-minute appointment or is it an hour appointment? So it's just being able to know all the little kind of rules that go in between, just between clicking submit and sending it off to insurance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Have you seen any or dealt with any cases of clinicians that like were trying to DIY it? They're doing their, because I know that a lot of EHRs, right? They have a system in place for us to submit our bills. And when a clinician is doing it that way, what are some of the risks involved in kind of relying on the EHR?
So it's not totally a risk in relying on the EHR, but it does become a risk on, if you're one person and you're seeing your clients and you're doing your notes and you're doing your billing, where are the checks and balances in there? Like, think of all the things that you have to do every day. And if someone missed their, if their appointment was 1 minute short of the time cutoff and you had them on the schedule for an hour, do you really remember that they were only here for 52 minutes instead of 53 minutes? So there's situations like that where your note would capture that, but if you're not remembering off the top of your head and you just go in and submit the claims, you've submitted something that's incorrect now, and it's correctable, but it's still one of those situations that's a liability if you're doing that on a regular basis. And insurance really does care about that. There's laws about that. So
yeah, I hear that. And another thing I've also heard is this thing of clawbacks. Can you kind of give us a couple of reasons why an insurance company would do a clawback? And then also, how does a billing company help the clinician during those clawbacks?
So there's always going to be a clawback at some point. Like, there's no way to stop that from happening. There's 100 million factors as to why that could happen. But first off is billing incorrectly. Sometimes there's situations where a patient or a client has insurance and the plan has terminated, but as in like it's expired, or they got a different plan through their employer or something like that. But their old insurance would continue to pay. And so the insurance comes back and recoups that money because they do their own internal reviews that says, oh, hey, actually, we shouldn't have paid for that, so we need to get our money back. So there's always things like that are going to happen. But the thing is, if you're getting clawbacks because of something that you're doing wrong, as far as like, how do I word this better? If you're getting clawbacks because of something that has to do with how you're billing based on how your notes are and it goes through an audit process, that's more of a liability problem. Clawbacks in general are going to happen. And can you appeal them? Yes, you can. Can you say, oh, well, we didn't know that they had new insurance, let's get their new insurance and bill the other insurance? Yes, those things happen. But if it has to do with like because of an audit and you're getting clawbacks, that's a whole separate situation.
Gotcha. So if like a clinician experiences a clawback, let's say they're using some EHR, and then they get hit with an audit, and can they reach out to a billing company to get some support in the moment, or do they need to have kind of set up a relationship beforehand?
No, I mean, people reach out for audits all the time, and to make sure that your practice is audited. But the thing is, like, the way that I think about it is, if you're already doing that before there's a problem, then you're good for when a problem may or may not come up, and it's not guaranteed that everyone is going to be audited, but you have to think that there's always going to be that possibility. So if you think about that ahead of time and kind of plan for that, and then you're already in the space where you need to be, because if they're going to say, oh, this wasn't medically necessary, that's a clawback. Well, yes, it was medically necessary, and we have the documentation to prove that it was medically necessary, those type of things. So it's one of those things where I feel like it's better to be prepared for something to happen, even if nothing happens. But yeah, people can reach out to companies who help with audits all the time, or billers or billing companies. We all kind of do different things. Not everyone does audits. Some people do audits. So it kind of figuring out who can help you in the moment. It's better to do that before a problem arises, because then once the problem is there, you're already in it then.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like for a clinician who's kind of been bootstrapping it, they started a new private practice or a solo practice, and they're using the EHR system. At what point do you think it would probably be a good idea for them to kind of start considering maybe partnering up with the billing company?
So really, billing is easy to learn and it's easy to do, and it's not a requirement that you have certifications or anything like that. But what happens is, in new practice, when your plate is too full, things are going to start dropping off at some point, right? So if you're the clinician and you're the business owner and you're the front office admin and you're the biller and you're the insurance follow-up person, if you're doing the jobs of 7 or 9 people, something is getting missed. And so it's good to know your own limits, right? Like, what can you handle? How much can you handle? If you have questions and you don't know what you're doing, like, this doesn't make sense, or, oh my gosh, I don't even know what this is. I don't understand this. I don't understand this letter. You need to reach out and ask people who do know that can help you to be able to get through that. Or if that's a regular, consistent thing, it could be time to start thinking about having someone come in and help with the billing.
So when a clinician starts kind of like not being able to stay up with the billing piece because they're doing all these other things, and then they're like, oh, I forgot that one bill, and dang, I got to do this, and oh, I got to respond to this consultation call, and
yes,
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Is there kind of like a I don't know what the right word is actually, but something that is like, do bills ever expire? Like if a clinician lets it go for a certain amount of time, will the insurance company be like, nah, man, it's too late, you can't?
So mental health, you have 90 days from the date of service.
Oh, wow.
I mean, for outpatient stuff, if it's Medicare, you have 12 months usually. Medicaid, sometimes it's 12 to 18 months, sometimes it's less. It just kind of depends on the state. There's a lot of rules that go into it, but typically it's 90 days. So if you saw somebody today, you could submit the claim up to 90 days from now. But if you do it on the last day, insurance is going to deny it for timely filing, and you just lost the money on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you seen clinicians miss out on bills because they submitted too late or they forgot about it?
Yes, that happens a lot. I do a lot of audits. I do a lot of cleanups. I do a lot of things like that. And it's just what ends up happening is exactly that. There's too many things that are going on. Billing kind of gets pushed to the side because there's a lot going on in a practice. And when you're trying to see a lot of people, that's one of the things that kind of starts to fall off until you realize, hey, I need to actually get this done, get some income brought in, that kind of thing. But yeah, a lot. It happens more often than people think, that it just kind of slips through. I just had one the other day where there was about 60 claims that had gotten forgot about over time. So that's 60 appointments that are not going to get paid for.
Wow. That's insane. And so in those cases, like there's nothing that can be done in that regard, or like do an appeal or anything?
The only way it's very hard to deal with timely filing situations that can be undone, but just because you forgot to do it, there's no recourse that says, hey, we actually did submit this on time and you didn't. There's different things that we can do as far as appeals if we actually did submit it in time. But if you just didn't submit it in time, there's not anything you can do about that.
Oh yeah, and I can imagine how tough it could be to try to get the insurance to pay that up after the time. And
they're gonna file that into the garbage can for you.
Ashley, what are some of like the misunderstandings about how insurance actually pays clinicians?
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more so my brain can?
Yeah, no worries. I was just kind of wondering, like, if there's any misunderstandings that you've seen out in the clinical world with therapists and what they believe how this whole payment system works.
So really, the biggest thing is when you're a provider, I mean, everybody prices their sessions how they need to be pricing their sessions. Insurance is the final determination on how much you get paid for those if you're accepting insurance. That you could charge them, I'm going to make up a number and it's probably not extremely ethical, but if you wanted to charge $1 million a session to insurance, you probably could charge them $1 million. Are they going to pay you $1 million? Absolutely not. They're not going to. They have a certain fee schedule that's based on your license type, what state you're in, sometimes what county you're in, and how many therapists or other providers of your license type are in that area, and how do they split up how everybody gets paid. There's a big math equation that they do to determine how much they're going to allow for a payment for a session of whatever the length is or whatever the service is that you're providing. So you can say whatever your session rate is, but it's kind of an arbitrary number until you actually submit the claim, until they actually process that claim. And the other part is, just because they say the allowable amount is whatever it is, that allowable amount gets split up between the insurance company and the patient. Sometimes the insurance company will pay the full allowable amount. Sometimes it's a shared cost between the patient will pay a certain percentage and the insurance will pay the remaining percentage. And sometimes the patient is responsible for the full amount until their deductible is met. But the allowable amount is the total cost that you're allowed to get paid for your session from the insurance company. And every insurance company offers a different rate. So and every plan, there's different plans under insurance companies that can kind of change the rates that you get paid. So there's no it's not, you're always going to get paid $100 or something like that. It's always, or I want to get paid $1 million. It's just, you get paid what you get paid, basically. And there's everything. It's listed out in your contracts and things so that you know how much you're going to get paid, but it just varies. There's nothing that's totally consistent across the board about it.
Yeah, wow. It sounds like it's a very complex world of like different options and scenarios. And so two things stand out to me about what you just said. The first one is that sometimes the client can be on the hook for a part of that payment. Mm-hmm. Does the billing company also deal with billing when it comes to the client directly, or is it only with insurance?
Some billing companies do and some don't. I do. I believe very much in patient care. So I start from the very beginning with everyone and verifying their benefits. I try to communicate with the office and or the patient and say, hey, this is what we pulled for your benefits. This is what your insurance says, and try to give them that information so that they're very well aware of, this is potentially what my insurance will cover. This is potentially what I will be responsible for. And then once we get everything back and everything is settled, if there's any amount that's due to the patient, they're usually aware of that, but sometimes things happen. I reach out to patients all the time to let them know, like, hey, you have a bill, or if they have a question like, hey, why did I get this bill? My insurance is supposed to cover everything fully. Well, that's not always how it works, but I try to have conversations with them so that they can understand exactly why and what happened. And, I am a human being, and human beings can also sometimes make mistakes. And so if a patient has a question or they want to ask a particular question, or because something doesn't look right, please reach out to me and have a conversation with me so that we can figure out what's going on, so that we can fix something if it needs to be fixed, or so that we all can understand a little bit better as to what's happening.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. And it also sounds like you are intentional about building a relationship with the client.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is that important? Like, to be, because when I think of billers, I'm thinking like somebody that, hey, this is so-and-so, you have a debt due, you know what I mean? Like, and so do you find that that's a difference in the industry? Like those that can actually build a relationship perform better, I want to say, than those who are kind of a little more robotic in a way?
It's kind of a hard question for me. I think it's more just how my personality, right? I feel like if we all work together in healthcare, the way healthcare should be, I guess, is more like, we all are here for the same purpose, but we all do different jobs, and the end goal is the same. The end goal is that everybody who is receiving care is getting the care that they need, and there's all the different avenues to be able to get there. And just because I do paperwork doesn't mean that I need to, have a different kind of personality towards a patient or even a provider. I'm an expert in my own field, you're an expert in your own field. And the point is that we all work together to get to the same end goal. And so just sitting off in a little back office and not having those relationships actually can make a difference between how a patient feels about great care or terrible care, or how a provider feels about, oh, I really love the biller that's working with me, or I really dislike this person. Or, if you had a lot of questions about your billing and you're not able to get a hold of me to ask the questions, or if I'm not able to explain, it kind of breaks that relationship a little bit, as far as what's going on in your practice if you don't feel like you know what's going on. So I feel like it's really just important. Communication is important. Relationship building across everything is important in a professional space, So I just think it's important.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, it just made me think about like the practice's brand, like, hey, our brand is, part of our brand is that we deliver exceptional customer service. And that includes all of the supports that we partner with, right? Include billing, maybe tax preparation, all of the touch points as part of that brand. And I think it's really cool that you are intentional about building that relationship with the client, because I think you're so right. Like sometimes some people may need to feel like paying their bill, and that comes with like a certain approach,
Right.
And that makes a lot of sense. You did mention earlier, Ashley, about the changes. Like there's so many options, different insurance carriers have different plans and that. Are you pretty up to date? And if something changes, like how quickly are you able to let the clinician know, or do they even need to know? Like, is it like
absolutely, we need to know. Our health insurance, I don't have a great term for it other than it changes faster than the wind blows in a different direction sometimes. So every time our administration changes, the rules change. Anytime the new guidelines come out, it's usually, every September, October, they're coming out with the new guidelines that are going to go into effect for the next year. All of those situations are changing, and because healthcare is ever evolving, so we can't stay exactly the same all the time, because things change as we know more and grow more. So we do stay on top of all of the information that comes out, and as soon as information comes out, and once I get a handle on what does this mean, what does this look like, I'm sending updates to my own providers that says, hey, in your practice, this is what's potentially going to change. And then as I get more information, I will let you know, and kind of that open communication. If you have questions, let me know. And then we kind of just chat about it. And when it comes to the billing side, the providers don't always have to deal with all the stuff that's on the billing side if I'm the one who's doing it, but they still need to know about what is happening with their practice. So it's that open communication and just letting them know what's changing, why it's changing, and what this means for them. And if you have questions about it, let me know, and we'll kind of go through it together. And sometimes, even still 20 years later, there's still some things that I'm like, I have no idea. We just kind of have to see what's happening. What do they call that? it's a controlled environment, not just like letting everything go into the wind, but it's still just the point of trying to say, okay, like, you know what, I really honestly don't know what this means. These are the rules, these are what we're going to follow, this is what we're going to do, but I don't really know exactly what that means right now. So just kind of also, it's also being honest about a situation, right? You know, like I said, I don't know exactly what's going to happen with this, but this is what it's supposed to do, this is what we need to do now, and when we get the results of that, we'll have to figure out what's happening next.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, you know, as you were saying that, it just, this word came up about transparency. You know, how do you, in your experience dealing with clinicians, practice owners, whatever, what is it like for them to hear? I don't know. Like, are they like, oh, what? Like, do they expect you to be the expert, or are they like, hey, I appreciate it. Like, it sounds like you got a plan. Like, why is that transparency so important in the world of billing?
So first off, this is your business, right? We're just here to support your business and what you do, and we need to do it the way that is the proper way to do it. And so if we're here and we're hiding everything and you don't know what's going on, I don't know, something happens, I disappeared into space one day or something, who would be able to pick up after me, right? Billing is supposed to be a thing where everyone knows exactly what is happening with it for the people who need to know what's happening with it, right? So the practice owner, it is your business. You should be able to see and know every single thing that's happening with your billing. There are certain things that, as the billing company, I would be in control of, as far as, you know, how I do things. But as far as being the sole owner of anything, no, I'm not the sole owner of anything, because it belongs to you and your practice. And I want to have open communication because, again, it's a partnership, right? I'm the expert when it comes to billing, and you're the expert when it comes to being a provider. And so together our worlds kind of collide. And also, I'm a support for you. So there's nothing that I should be doing that you shouldn't be aware of. And there's nothing, I don't believe in bad questions, right? If you have a question, you should be able to ask me what questions those are. And I should be able to answer them. And if I cannot answer them for you, that could potentially be a problem. Now, there's kind of a nuance to that. You know, of course, we don't want to get, 900 or 1,000 emails every single day for every single little thing, because there's a whole process. But if I can explain what that process is to you, then that does kind of cut down the worry, because it does create a little bit of worry. Oh my gosh, this claim has been sitting here for 2 days. Is it going to get paid? Yes, it's going to get paid. There's rules that go with that. But if I can explain the entire process from the beginning to you, that should cut down a little bit on that anxiety that comes from not knowing what's going to happen with it later. And then we can work on more of the important things.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So speaking about the whole process, I'm thinking of like a solo practice owner that hires their first employee, their first clinician, and now it becomes a little group practice. Do you, as part of the onboarding, would it be a good idea, or do you do this or offer this to meet the new clinician just quickly, to do like I don't know if that's a thing in the billing world. Is that necessary?
I do have some practices where I do that, and I have other practices where no, I don't do that. It just really becomes practice preference at that point. Okay. I have some practices where everyone, it's a group practice, but everyone's their 1099s. And so everyone's kind of in charge of their own clients. Everyone can, in those situations, if they want to email me, they can. Usually, depending on how big the practice is, I also work with like front office staff or practice management or different things like that, where those are fielded first before they end up coming to me, and the workload kind of gets split up between two different groups there. But I do have practices where, there's, 7 providers in one practice, and each one of them has a different question about a different thing, and they end up emailing in and asking a question about whatever they have. I'm personally open to that. Not everyone is open to that, but I'm okay with it, and I don't mind it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, and I appreciate it, because it makes a lot of sense that if the practice has 1099s, then they're kind of responsible for their own billing and they're doing their own thing. Yeah, that's interesting. I like to go back, Ashley, to what you were talking about earlier about the practice owner who starts letting it slip. They got a lot of things going on, right? And in your experience, what have you seen, or how has that change been from going from that state where like things are slipping, bills are going maybe left for a week or two or longer, and then after they get a billing company, like what does that change look like?
So an example that I have is actually pretty recently. It was a practice that started up. She actually started immediately as a group practice that had 8 different providers within her practice, and she was doing the billing for herself while doing this startup and having all of these things. She started to notice that some things were off, and she reached out to us for accounts receivable cleanup, and I do that, and I can do it fairly quickly. I was able to find $115,000 that she just had sitting there waiting over the last year because things were missed or things were not billed at they weren't billed the way that they could have been billed, and also things were just sitting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And there's some of that ends up not being recoverable. Like I said, timely filing, we miss that. But there's other things where it's like, hey, it was submitted, but we just never followed up on it to figure out where it was. $115,000 is quite a lot of money.
Wow. So
Yeah.
did she get that, or the practice owner?
That's what I was able to bring her back into her practice. Yeah. You know,
Yeah, well, I hope you got a
there was,
little
there was a little more than that we're not able to fully recover, but $115,000 is a lot. Yep. Just kind of sitting there waiting. And if you're not, if you're trying, that's why I say, if you're trying to do all of the things, not one person on this planet can do all of the things all of the time. And that's why our jobs are different. And that's why different people have different jobs for different things.
Yeah. Actually, and as you were saying that, I'm like, wow, that is, I mean, one, that's a lot of money, but then two, I'm thinking like as a future practice owner, I don't have one yet, but I hope to one day. I'm like, I think to myself, like, what are kind of like some of the pros and cons you think of like hiring an in-house billing person maybe to like having a company like yourself that you partner with? Is there a difference?
It really just depends on the preference, right? I have been the person that has been hired directly to come and drive into your office every single day and sit and do my job. And there's nothing that's wrong with that. It just depends really on preference. And also, managing wise, when it comes to private practice, it kind of depends on the skills that the person that you're hiring bring. Are they on the job trained and you are also on the job trained? Do we have enough information to be able to maintain the billing? If you both are kind of on the job trained, who actually kind of knows what's going on with it. But if you do hire someone that has the skills, that's willing to come into the office and do all that, there's nothing that's wrong with that at all. And there's nothing wrong with hiring companies. It just really is preference and affordability and what works best for you in the end.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If a practice owner is kind of in the market for partnering up with a billing company, maybe they're not at the level yet with like revenue and profit and stuff like that, where they can hire a whole in-house billing person. What do they look for? Like, are there like training certificates that a company could have? Like, is there like a certain like certificate or degree that can make the practice or a billing company sound more, I don't want to say credible, but there's some trainings that are like, okay, if you have this is kind of like special, you know what I mean?
Yes. So the main thing is there is no requirements, like in the United States, there's no requirements that you have to be certified to do billing. There's just not a requirement for that. Now, with that being said, there are certified professional billers, there are certified professional coders, CMRS, there's all these different agencies that offer certifications. Also, a lot of those certifications require schooling, 2-year degrees sometimes, other times 4-year degrees. It just kind of depends. So certified professional billers, certified professional coders, those type of certifications can be important. It just shows that we've learned what the foundation is, right? We understand the foundation of billing, why we do billing, how we do billing, what are the laws that are involved with billing. And then after you get the foundation of that, you go out and then you learn as you go in whatever specialties or whatever areas you decide that you want to be working in. But I feel like it's important because if you don't have the certifications, you don't always have the foundations, and you cannot ask questions that you don't know you should ask. So, there's a lot of laws that go into billing. And if someone says, oh, what's the law for this? I didn't even know there was a law for that. It's kind of one of those things. If you're not aware as the practice owner, and then you hire a biller who's also not aware, there's things that are underlying getting missed because nobody really knows that it should even exist. So it's important to think about those things. Again, it's not a requirement, but it's important to think about those things. And if you as the provider are confident and how billing works, and that you can handle someone that doesn't have the certifications and the foundation, then that's another way to kind of think about it too. It's, again, not that it's bad. It's just kind of, where is your level as the practice owner, and where is the level of the person that you're bringing on to deal with the entire business side of your practice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of crazy to think that something as important as billing, when you're dealing with HIPAA and all these things, right? Like, there is no like standard like credentialing process for these types of businesses. So yeah, that's wild, because in our field, like, where it's super regimented, right? Like,
I wish that we all had to be licensed, to be honest. Like, I wish that was really a thing. It's just not a thing. And it's not to say who's better or worse or whatever. It's just, I feel like there needs to be kind of more. On the biller side, it needs to be a lot more regulated. There's already laws and there's already things, but everything is open for interpretation. Everybody does things a little bit differently. And I feel like I wish that there was a lot more regulation when it came to billing, and who's able to do billing and Yeah.
Yeah, no, as you were saying that, I was thinking about a conversation I was having in one of the Facebook groups, and there was a mention about like overseas billing companies,
Mhm.
and I gotta admit, I was a little sketched out about it because I'm like, how are we hiring overseas billing companies to handle domestic HIPAA? You know what I mean? Like, is that to have the same, like
So
it's not
again,
like yeah, go ahead.
it's not bad. They also have certifications. They also have schooling. There's a lot of really great people overseas that can do billing, and there's nothing wrong with that. My thought process is more along the lines of HIPAA is really only enforceable in the United States, and so big hospitals and huge billing companies that partner with hospitals when they are hiring offshore people to be able to do the billing for them, they have the money and they have the infrastructure to be able to build how that works properly. As a private practice with 1 or 2 or 5 providers who's not making nearly as much income as a hospital is, are you able to afford the infrastructure that it would take to make that work for you? Those are things to think about too. Is it bad? Absolutely not. Are there great people? Absolutely. But can you, as a practice, handle think of the worst thing that could possibly happen in a situation like that? Are you financially able to handle the recourse for that situation? Again, it's not that one is better than the other. It's just to think about on a smaller scale, like the affordability of something like that happening.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, and that's probably something that, yeah, it's kind of a big deal, right? To consider is
To
what
me,
is
it's
something.
a big deal. To me, it's a big deal. And it's, like I said, I never want to make it sound like a terrible thing. It's not a terrible thing. There's great people everywhere. And everyone brings different sets of skills in different areas, but it's just something to think about. The bigger that you are, if you can afford that, totally great. Maybe it's the right option for you. But if you're smaller and you think about worst case scenario, are you able to handle what happens in a worst case scenario in a situation like that? If you can't, then maybe you need to think about a different path.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, if there's a clinician out there who's kind of on the fence about getting a partner with the billing company, what's like one takeaway that you'd like for them to have after listening to this podcast episode?
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, like what's one takeaway that you'd like a clinician who's on the fence about partnering with a billing company like that?
I mean, it's so my own takeaway from it is a big decision. Okay. We are touching a lot of parts of business that affect your clients. It affects you, it affects your business. We're touching a lot of those parts, and it's a big decision. And you need to be able to feel comfortable with whoever you're having touching that. It's not a body fill position. It's someone that you feel comfortable with, who knows either more than or just as much and can explain to you exactly what's happening when you have questions that's going on, and to make sure that you're staying in compliance, and to make sure that in the end, we want to make sure that the patient can get their services covered and that you can get paid. And that's not really what it's meant to be. Healthcare is never meant to be about money. But unfortunately, the world we live in, that's kind of what happens on the back end. So it's more just trying to make sure that you're asking the right questions to the right people, that you're looking to be able to hire. And if you have something in your gut that tells you, I don't know about this, it's probably not the right option for you.
Gotcha.
Maybe you need to look somewhere else, or maybe you need to ask more questions or something like that. But if there's something in your gut that says this doesn't feel right, it's probably not right for you.
Dang. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Ashley, where can people find you? Let us know your social media website. We like to put them in the show notes.
So I'm on all the socials. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and even TikTok. And then I have my website, which is gbbillings.com.
Awesome. Ashley, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun and very informative. Maybe we can do it again in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Awesome, Ashley. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right. You too. Bye.